Good evening, students. I hope you have had a very wonderful and very auspicious Diwali. Hope you had a good time and you had a lot of family time, lot of time with your friends. Right. Great. So today we are going to discuss or continue our discussion what we started before the break of the Diwali break. We were doing registration. So under registration, we understood few concepts which were very, very crucial. We understood why registration is required and what is the aggregate turnover. So we were discussing on aggregate turnover. This chart, you have to keep it in mind that what you have to consider for the purpose of aggregate turnover. Aggregate turnover includes the value of all your outward supplies, that is your taxable and exempt supplies, your exports and interstate supplies, but it excludes, and this whatever inclusion you're doing, you have to do for all India basis. That is one PAN, on one PAN number, whatever turnover is considered, that has to be included. And what you will exclude the taxes and inward supplies on which you have to pay reverse charge, that you will exclude. So this will be the aggregate turnover, which will be relevant to consider the limit of what is the respective turnover limit, that is 20 lakhs and 40 lakhs. What is the limit to be considered? This value you will consider. Okay. Then the threshold limit, we understood what is the threshold limit. The threshold limit is for the state of four special category states, which is Tripura, Nagaland, Mizoram, and Manipur. For these states, it is 10 lakhs. And for the other six states, which is in my sequence, which I remember, Uttarakhand, Puducherry, Meghalaya, Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim, and Telangana. These states, the limit is 20 lakhs. So 10 lakhs, then 20 lakhs. And then for all other states, it is 20 lakhs for services and 40 lakhs for goods. So this we had understood. Correct? Any doubts till our last session, or everything is clear? Right. Very nice. Good evening, everyone, again who have joined in late. So we have understood these things till our last session. One good suggestion was given by Mr. Mustafa Mistir that, sir, you can start your class with a good motivational quote. Definitely, it's a good way to start off. Today's motivation quote, I would say, is very simple. Before we start on this session, that uh, dreams, right? We have dreams. All dreams, it's about dreams. All dreams are within our reach, right? All dreams are within our reach. All you have to do is simple. Okay. Everybody has a dream, right? We have a dream to become a CA. That's why we are pursuing this course. That's why we are here. And we want to achieve it. So that's our dream, right? All dreams are within our reach. Nothing is impossible. All you have to do is keep moving towards that. That's it. Just keep moving towards your dream. To move towards your dream, you have to have the vision and you should have the determination that you will attain it. How many other obstacles come in between, you will still reach it, right? Like you have to go from your classes or from your office to your house, and in between there's a rain, there's a continuous rain, it does not stop. Will you not go home? You will wait for some time, but you will see that you will get drenched and still reach home, right? Because your target is to reach home. That's a dream. Similarly, our dreams are in such a way that all dreams are within reach. All you have to do is keep moving towards them. Okay. Thanks, Mustafa. With that quote, we'll start the session for today. So we understood the basics of registration. Now we will get into compulsory registration. Okay. When is a registration required? When is a registration required? So there is something called as compulsory registration. So first we know that threshold limit is there. Apart from threshold also, compulsory we have to register irrespective of whether you are touching the threshold or no. That is called compulsory registration. Now, who has to take compulsory registration? These people have to take compulsory registration. Who is the person? First is a person who is making interstate taxable supply. Okay. A person who is making an interstate taxable supply, even if he has 1 rupee of turnover, or 1 rupee, very small amount, say he's made just 1000 rupees of interstate taxable supply. The limit we know is 20 lakhs and 40 lakhs, but since he's made an interstate supply, he has to compulsory register. So if he's sending any goods from one state to another state, it is an interstate supply, then he will have to register it compulsory. But there is an exception. The exception is that if he's making, the rule first says that the section says that if you're making interstate taxable supply, and we know taxable supply can be taxable supply of goods or taxable supply of services. So both included first in the section. Then there is a exception wherein the exception is come through notification. The government felt that no, if we bring this section in spirit like this, then it will cause a lot of hardships. So what we'll do is we'll give some exceptions. The first exception they came up with a person who is making interstate taxable services. So if you're making interstate taxable services, then it's fine. You don't have to compulsory register. You will have to register only once you cross the 20 lakhs and 40 lakhs limit. And it's for services. So maximum 20 lakhs for TNMM states, 10 lakhs for all other states, 20 lakhs. Right? Second exception is if you are providing notified or if you're selling for goods also notified handicraft goods. If you're selling any notified handicraft goods, then that second exception comes in and you don't have to register it. Okay. So first is interstate taxable services. Second is for notified handicraft goods. If you're selling notified handicraft goods, what are notified handicraft goods? We'll come to that notification. Basically, those goods which are made through hand and things like that, they are handicraft goods. If you're into that, then even if you're making any supplies, of course, below that threshold limit, then you don't have to register. Okay. So that is the first category. So if you make any, what do we conclude then? That if you make any interstate supply of goods, then you have to register. Yeah. Questions here? Channapatna toys are handicraft goods. Yes. These are the examples of those handicraft goods. So if you're dealing with those handicraft goods, even if you're making any interstate supply from Channapatna, you're selling it to Andhra Pradesh. Okay. And if the limit is below 40 lakhs, because for goods we know it is 40 lakhs. So there, if it is 40 lakhs, then compulsory registration is not required. But same, instead of Channapatna toys, if you sell, say, plastic toys, then should you register or no? If you're making same from Channapatna to you are selling to another state, then registration is required or no? You're selling for say only 5,000 rupees. required. Only handicraft goods, but not plastic goods, right? Required, it is taxable, correct, because it is an interstate and not handicraft goods, so registration will be required. Whether taxable, non-taxable, that is not the point. The point is making interstate taxable supply. Yeah, taxable also is required, because if it is exempted, again that will be there. So you're right, Naveen, that if you're making interstate taxable supply of other goods other than handicraft goods and other than sub services, then you do not have to, you do not get this exemption, and you will have to do compulsory registration. Okay. Next is casual taxable person who is making taxable supply. We know who's a casual taxable person, right? A person who is going to another state and taking registration. But that registration, he's not taking like a permanent registration. He's not taking a normal registration. He's taking a registration because he's going there for a temporary purpose, say for exhibition purposes. Okay. Or a limited duration, say he's there only for 2 months and then he will come back. So he will not take normal registration. He can take a casual taxable registration. So if this casual taxable person goes there, then also there is no limit. Say he may go there and do sales only of 10 lakh rupees. So can he get exception? No, he will not get any exception. He will have to compulsory take registration before he starts the business there itself. Okay. So casual taxable person going from a person going from one state to another state, taking a temporary registration. He is a casual taxable person. Such casual taxable person has to take registration there. Again, there is an exception there, that if a casual taxable person is going and selling only handicraft goods, then the exception will kick in. Then if he's selling up to 10 lakhs for TNMM states and 20 lakhs for other states and 40 lakhs for other states, right? Three categories of states. Third category of state, if he's selling up to 40 lakhs, then also he will not have to register. Very important, this 24, because it may not be coming as a practical question, but it may come like a theoretical question or a MCQ. So that's why we have to grasp this very carefully. Then the person who is required to pay tax under reverse charge. I have taken some services, or I have taken some goods on which I have to pay RCM. So I will not see my turnover there. My turnover may be zero, or my turnover may be just 5 lakh rupees. So I cannot tell no, I will not register. You have to register because you are coming under that notification wherein you have to pay reverse charge. If the liability is on you, right? The government has cast the liability on your head. They have said कि आपको तो जीएसटी रिवर्स चार्ज में पे करना ही है, तो फिर आपको पे करना ही पड़ेगा. आप अनरजिस्टर्ड हो करके यू कैन नॉट टेक अ escape route. So if some liability, typical case of a businessman taking the services of a advocate. Okay, advocate providing services to a businessman, then the businessman has to take the registration and pay it. So even if this businessman was not registered, अभी इसने कुछ lawyer का service ले लिया है, right? Then he will have to take registration for the purpose of paying this reverse charge. So he will jump from the person from the bracket of a person who is not registered to register just because of RCM also. Just because he is taking one services of an advocate, he will have to register. Or एक बार registration हो गया, then on all his sales, he has to collect GST and he has to pay the GST. Clear? So reverse charge पे अगर आपको tax pay करना है, then you will fall under registration. And it is not that कि सिर्फ आप reverse charge pay ही करोगे, सिर्फ reverse charge you will pay. Once you are registered, you will pay GST on all your supplies. So there is no separate registration for RCM, separate registration for forward charge. One registration, अगर RCM liability आपके ऊपर आ जाता है, तो then you have to pay it. You have to register and pay it. Again, exception, person who's making exclusively outward supply, which is liable to RCM, is exempted. Matlab, I am a supplier, like I am an advocate. Okay, I'm an advocate. I am providing supply of services to companies, right? My all my supplies are under reverse charge, because when a advocate provides any services, it is always under reverse charge, because when he provides to an individual, it is exempted. So when he makes supply, all of his supplies under reverse charge, the recipient will pay. So that's why the government has said, once you are making a supply on which tax is payable by the recipient under reverse charge, then you do not have to take a registration. So this is a very, very big relief. So any advocates who is practicing in India, he is providing all services to corporates, and thereby all of his supplies will be paid by the recipient. So they will register and they will pay. This person, this advocate, he need not take registration. Okay. So there is other various reverse charges under goods and under services. So another reverse charge criteria is a person who is making metal scrap supplies. So person who is supplying metal scrap, he cannot get this exemption. He will have to always register. So a supplying person who is supplying metal scrap, he will have to take the registration. For him, the exception will not come. Just give me 1 minute. Yes. So the question which has been asked here is, if an advocate provides services to unregistered individual and GST invoice is not issued, how can it be known and government will collect tax on RCM? So if it is supplied to an unregistered person, Navneet, then it is exempted. There is an exception. Exemption जो हम पढ़े थे ना, वहाँ पे आप देखिए, I've given a chart also wherein an advocate providing services to a person who is unregistered. Okay, there the services becomes exempted, and when he's supplying services to a businessman, then the businessman has to pay GST under reverse charge. In third case, exception is only for service providers. Um, Correct. Not only service providers, even for persons who are supplying goods. So for goods criteria, what it is, Golti is a tobacco leaf seller. Person who is selling tobacco leaves, tendu leaves. Okay, he is supplying goods on which GST is paid under reverse charge mechanism. So that person also need not register you. Clear? Good. So except metal scrap supplier, all other supplier of goods and all other supplier of services on which GST is paid under reverse charge by the recipient, then that person is required to pay. Then the person who is required to pay tax under reverse charge will register, but the person supplying need not pay, need not register. Third is non-resident taxable person. Who is a non-resident taxable person? A person who is not resident of India. He is a resident of some other country and he's coming to India and selling some goods. So for him also no threshold limit. आप बाहर से आ रहे हो इंडिया में, आपको फर्स्ट ट्रांजैक्शन के ऊपर रजिस्ट्रेशन लेना ही पड़ेगा. सिमिलर टू अ कैजुअल टैक्सेबल पर्सन. जैसे कैजुअल टैक्सेबल पर्सन वी सेड दैट यू डोंट गेट एनी एक्सेप्शन. सिमिलरली अ नॉन रेसिडेंट टैक्सेबल पर्सन ऑल्सो, वंस यू एंटर यू हैव टू रजिस्टर. At least in casual taxable person, we has notified handicraft goods. लेकिन non-resident taxable person में कुछ भी exemption नहीं है. Even if he is coming and selling notified handicraft goods, he will have to register. Okay. Next is a person who is doing a e-commerce operator. A person who is doing a e-commerce operating transaction. That person is has not required is required to take compulsory registration. ठीक है. E-commerce operator जैसे क्या हुआ, स्विगी, जोमेटो, Uber, Ola, all these people have to take compulsory registration. Again, there are exceptions that the requirement was that first e-commerce operator will register. And if you are supplying it to through an e-commerce, you also have to register. Both people have to register. E-commerce will definitely register. But when you are supplying through an e-commerce, you also had to be registered. But now they have two exceptions. One is if you are supplying services, then you can claim limit of 10 lakhs and 20 lakhs. Okay, 10 lakhs for TNMM states and all other states 20 lakhs for supply of services. Even if it is interstate, yes sir. Even if it is interstate, still you can claim this exemption. कि अगर आप एक e-commerce operator, जैसे एक चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट है, वो अपना सर्विसेज क्या है ऑनलाइन सप्लाई करता है. देयर आर वेरियस एप्स लाइक freelancer.com, and that's an e-commerce operator. Now from freelancer you can make interstate supplies also. So that limit of अगर आप interstate supply कर देते हो then first point will trigger, but then this comes as a rescue. It says that if you are supplying services through an e-commerce operator up to your limit of 10 lakhs or 20 lakhs respective state wise, तब तक आपको registration की जरूरत नहीं है. Okay, so till 20 lakhs worth of services you don't have to register. Once you touch the limit of 20 lakhs, this is of course 20 lakhs per year. If you touch 20 lakhs, then you will have to register. Second exception is persons making intrastate supply of goods. Now, persons who are making intrastate supply of goods, this I've highlighted in bold because this is a new entry. Whenever there are any new additions, then definitely you can some question from that. The second one says that persons making intrastate supply of goods through e-commerce. So if you are making any intrastate supply of goods through an e-commerce operator, then also you don't have to register. Did you understand this? Because this is very important. E-commerce operator, like if a person wants to sell goods through Flipkart, he has to take GST registration. Correct. That is right. But there is an exception that this such person who is selling goods through Flipkart also he will not register if he is making only intrastate supply of goods through this e-commerce operator. मतलब विद इन द स्टेट अगर सेल कर रहा है तो फिर उसको रजिस्ट्रेशन लेने की जरूरत नहीं. So will this apply for any person who is selling through Flipkart or anything else? That is my question. So the question is, anything we supply through an e-commerce, e-commerce will distribute to any person, whether it be interstate or intrastate. So fair, then what is this case where they are given an exception saying that a person making intrastate supply of goods of e-commerce, so then he will not have to register. So which practical case do you think it will come? इंट्रास्टेट में भी लिमिट पार करने पे जीएसटी लेना पड़ेगा. करेक्ट. लिमिट क्रॉस करने पे तो लेना ही पड़ेगा. करेक्ट है. लेकिन लिमिट के अंदर है तो उसको लेना नहीं पड़ेगा अगर वो इंट्रास्टेट सप्लाई करेगा. तो सप्लायर को कैसे पता चलेगा कि ई कॉमर्स ऑपरेटर इंट्रास्टेट कर रहा है या इंटरस्टेट कर रहा है? एनी गेसेस? रिसिपेंट के थ्रू नहीं, उसके पास कंट्रोल नहीं रहेगा. एनीबडी एल्स? इंटरस्टेट सप्लाई दिस लिमिट इज अप्लीकेबल? नो, इंटरस्टेट सप्लाई के लिए लिमिट नहीं है, इंट्रास्टेट के लिए ही अप्लीकेबल है प्रेरणा. As you can see here, persons making intrastate supply of goods. Only a person who is making intrastate supply of goods. So practically, what do you think? Because I was also thinking ki intrastate supply, how will I have control? Person setting up of temporary exhibition stall needs to be registered or no? A person who is setting up a temporary exhibition, Sanjeevni, he will take the registration as a casual taxable person. If he's in the same state, then he can add that address as a additional place of business. But if he's going to a different state and he's not having any fixed establishment, then he will have to take a casual taxable person registration. No guesses on this part? Because Flipkart, Amazon वगैरह पे तो whatever customer comes, they will sell it. So they cannot control the customer. But still, government has given this exception. So in which case will this apply? Foreign supplier making taxable supply in India is NRTP? Yes. So a foreign supplier coming to India and supplying, he is a NRTP. Sir, in case intrastate supply of goods through e-commerce operator need not register, like for example, trying to sell through Flipkart cart gold coins, not through Flipkart cart. Yeah, it could be through Flipkart cart, but through Flipkart cart, you can supply interstate also, right? Because there's no restriction. They can sell interstate also. So right answer, yes, you're right, Miss Steffi, that now it is not just e-commerce. There is something called as local commerce, right? Like Instamart, Blinkit, Swiggy, Zepto. These people supply within a limited range. They do not supply outside the state. So if you are supplying goods through them, then you know for sure that you will supply only for within the state. So for such people, they have come up with this exception that where you are dealing with quick commerce, apart from e-commerce, there's a special category called quick commerce. If you're supplying it through them, then if you're having a limit up to 20 or 40 lakhs, यहाँ पे goods हो गया, तो 40 lakhs तक, if you're supplying, still you don't have to register. Clear now? So when such question comes, you have to be very careful. So persons making intrastate supply of goods through e-commerce will be all this quick commerce. Very smart answer, Steffi. That's your right. Means Flipkart के थ्रू सप्लाई करने का मतलब इंटरस्टेट ही माना जाएगा और ब्लिंकिट के थ्रू सप्लाई को इंट्रा स्टेट माना जाएगा. करेक्ट, बिकॉज उनका नेचर ही ऐसा है. फ्लिपकार्ट कैन सप्लाई टू इंटरस्टेट एंड ब्लिंकिट विल ऑलवेज सप्लाई इंट्रा स्टेट. सो दैट इज द वे वी विल हैव टू डिस्टिंग्विश इट. ठीक है. सो 1 2 3 4 5 कैटेगरीज. देन देर आर मोर कैटेगरीज. The sixth category is a person who is to deduct TDS, right? There are some supplies which I make supply to a government. Then the government has to deduct TDS. So government का turnover 20 lakhs है या नहीं है, they will have to take compulsory registration. So any person, government authority, government undertaking, or a government entity, when they are receiving any goods, they have to deduct TDS. So they cannot say, no, my turnover is less, I will not register. No. अगर आपको TDS डिडक्ट करना है तो फिर आपको registration लेना जरूरी है. If you are a notified person as a TDS deductor, then you have to register it. Exception कुछ नहीं है. So all these category of slides, what we'll see here there are no exceptions. The first category, they had some exceptions, but in second category, there are no exceptions. Second is a person who is an agent. मतलब a person who is selling on behalf of anyone. In schedule 1, we had seen, right? Any supply between the principal and agent without consideration is also supply. So when the agent is selling anything on behalf of the principal, he will have to take compulsory registration. Then a person who is an input service distributor. Who is an input service distributor? A person who is distributing the credits to its other branches. He is an input service distributor. He will also have to take compulsory registration. Then a person who is doing a online information database access and retrieval services. So person who supplies OIDAR services, that is from outside India, if he's doing any online database, like we had seen this example of Spotify, right? From outside India is providing information to Indian customers. He will have to take compulsory registration. And last thing, again, this is highlighted in bold because this is also an amendment. Any person who is supplying online money gaming from a place outside India. तो ऑनलाइन गेम्स जो है जो आउटसाइड इंडिया से इतने इंडिया तो लिमिट रहेगा ही विद इन इंडिया ऑल्सो दे बिकम ई कॉमर्स सो दे विल हैव टू रजिस्टर बट इफ दे आर रजिस्टर आउटसाइड इंडिया स्टिल दे हैव टू टेक कंपल्सरी रजिस्ट्रेशन ओके अब तो सर ऑनलाइन गेम बंद हो गया नहीं ऑनलाइन गेम पूरा बंद नहीं होना देर आर सम ऑनलाइन गेम्स इज द ऑनलाइन मनी गेम फुल्ली ब्लॉक्ड Netflix, yes, that's also an example of a OIDR services, right? Money games blocked. Okay, so matlab this Dreams 11 and other things has all blocked, is it? So in case of agent, what if the principal is already registered? So if the principal is registered and agent also will have to register because the supply are made by the agent on his own account. If he is making the supply on behalf of the principal and he is only getting his commission charges, then it will be supplier's liability. But if the agent is acting as the principal, he's collecting the goods in his name and selling it, right? In schedule 1, you see there is a chart. In schedule 1, if you see gold tenant, there is a chart wherein if he is supplying on his own account, then he will have to register. Dream 11 chalta hai. Okay. Just take some clarification because I'm not clear on that aspect, Navneet. Free games play karwata hai, but in response, if someone comes first, then they give money or cars. Okay. Yes, various scenarios will be there. So all of these, there is no exception in first instances. So all of this is compulsory registration. That 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 category यहाँ पे है और यहाँ पे है again 5 category. Total 10 categories. 10 categories में in 4 categories there are some exception. In other 6 categories there is no exception. तो इनको compulsory registration लेना ही पड़ेगा. So in a nutshell, if we read section 24, we see that there are certain category of people, they don't have to touch the limit of 10 lakhs and 20 lakhs. With small transaction also, they have to compulsory take the registration. That is the main aspect of section 24. It's saying that हमने तो limit set कर दिया, but these 10 category of people, you have to take compulsory registration even if you don't touch the threshold limit. Okay. E-commerce operator. This is specifically dealt in a special manner because every e-commerce operator who has to get registered, every e-commerce operator who is required to collect tax at source, like how we saw a person who is to deduct tax at source, that is covered under section 51 as a TDS deductor. He has to take compulsory registration. Similarly, e-commerce operator has to collect TCS, collect taxes. Person TDS is tax deduction at source and TCS is tax collected at source. A person who is to collect tax at the source, he has to take compulsory registration. And a person who is required to pay tax under section 9(5). In supply, if you see, we had covered special category of e-commerce operator who will pay tax on behalf of the supplier. So supplier will supply, but supplier will not pay the tax. This e-commerce operator will collect and pay the tax. Why? Because they are covered under this section 9(5). And 9(5) says a person who is required to pay tax under 9(5), he is an e-commerce operator, he has to take compulsory registration. Now, who is this 9(5) category of people? And who is this first category of people? Can you give me some examples? Who is under this and who is under this? TCS is not considered levy of tax under GST. That is income tax TCS. We are talking about GST TCS. So same terms are used in both the acts, but that under income tax is different, and now under GST it is different. Banks, no, no, Stephanie, banks will not come. 9-5, yes, yes. Harsh Mishra has given the correct answer. That 9-5 category are suppliers like Swiggy, Zomato, Urban Company, Make My Trip. These are the examples of 9-5. That is, those people who will pay the tax on behalf of the supplier. That is, if you're buying any food from Zomato, the restaurant person will not pay the GST. Zomato will pay the GST. Tax will be collected from the customer and they will pay the GST. Okay, that is the category of persons who are required to pay tax under 9-5. And second category is this category, which is every electronic components operator who is required to collect tax at source. So other than those categories who are coming under 9-5, and if you're doing any transaction through this e-commerce operator, then they will collect tax from you. That is the first category. सर जीएसटी का टीसीएस का टॉपिक अलग होता है, यस टीसीएस और टीडीएस का टॉपिक अलग होता है, उसमें आपको डिटेल में पता चलेगा. Uber, Ola, yes, Uber, Ola are all coming under 9-5 Steffi. Passenger transport services are not under 9-5. Only those categories of e-commerce operator who are other than 9-5 will have to collect TCS. Yeah, first one is Flipkart and second one is Ola and Uber. Correct. You're right, Ms. Pooja Bayal. Amazon and Flipkart, they are under this first category. That is other normal category. So if you're supplying, say, goods, you are having lot of steel products and you're selling the steel items through Flipkart, right? So Flipkart will not pay TDS on, will not pay taxes on that. You as a supplier have to pay taxes. But Flipkart के through जो भी आपका transaction होगा, on that Flipkart will collect TCS and remit the balance from you. जैसे आपने 1,000 रुपए का सेल किया, okay, customer has to pay you 1,000 rupees plus GST, say 1,180. Now the money will go to Flipkart. Flipkart will deduct the TCS because it has to collect the TCS. So from this 1,180, it will say collect TCS of 100 rupees and pay the balance to you, right? So Amazon, Flipkart, Myntra, all will come under the first category. Clear? Second is persons who supply goods through e-commerce operator. If you're supplying of services, then you can claim exception. Otherwise, if you're making any interstate supply, right? Or if you're making any supplies, not only interstate, sorry, if you're making any supplies through e-commerce, you have to register. But then there's an exception that if you're making supply of services, you can get the threshold limit. Second is again threshold limit will apply if you're supplying intrastate supply of goods through an e-commerce. जो हमने देखा है कि people are dealing with quick commerce operators, they can claim the exception of registration limits. ठीक है, clear यहाँ तक? Then we'll go to 23. But are you clear with section 24? Not many questions asked, so I'm really doubtful. Intrastate goods limit applied. I didn't understand your question, Navneet. Clear, Sangeetavani. Very nice. What about lens cart? Okay, Lenskart has offline stores, but you're saying that Lenskart's make supplies through e-commerce. So it's not an e-commerce because it has its own products. E-commerce is when you sell your products on somebody else's website. That is e-commerce. But Lenskart has its own products and it's selling through its own website. So it's not a e-commerce operator. Means if e-commerce provides supply of goods interested, then after limit have to take GST registration. Correct. Yes, compulsory registration under section 24. Which category, Mustafa? Yes, I understand that I'm saying yes. Okay, okay, nice. Okay, so we have understood section 24, that is compulsory registration, that who has to take registration compulsory. Now we'll go to section 23 because first we have to understand who has to take registration. Then we can, it will be easy for us to go through section 23. 23 is saying person who is not liable for registration. 22 says the threshold limit. 24 says compulsory registration. And 23 is saying that person's not liable for registration. First is person who is exclusively in the business of supplying goods or services which is not liable to tax or supply of wholly exempt goods and services. So when will this come? This will come in a case when a person who is supplying anything on which tax is not payable. So if you are doing only exempt supply or your supply is fully exempted because of that exemption notification, then you do not have to take registration. What are these category? A person who is exclusively engaged in supply of petroleum products. I'm just giving an example because petroleum is outside the GST. So if you're dealing only in petroleum products, then you do not have to take registration because it is supply of goods which is not liable to tax, right? Second example is a charitable trust. A charitable trust has certain limits on what it can let for which it does not have to pay tax, like room rent up to 500 rupees, right? So if it's providing room at affordable prices of 300 rupees and it's collecting donation for its charitable activities, so then it is exempted, correct? So it is only doing that activity. That is a person who is engaged exclusively in the business of supplying goods or services or supplying of wholly exempt goods or services, then it need not register. Okay. Second category is agriculturist to the extent of supply of produce out of cultivation of land. So whatever it is supplying, agriculturist who's supplying the goods out of the cultivation of land, he is selling vegetables, he is selling fruits, whatever it's cultivating, he's selling it. So agriculturist of orders, agriculture produce, it is exempted. So that's why agriculturist also need not take registration. So if you see the words here carefully, they're using two words, agriculturist to the extent of supply of produce. So only if he is supplying some goods to the extent of his produce, then he'll be exempted. He will not be required to take registration. But now this, our agriculturist has a big farmhouse. Now he has constructed a warehouse and he's renting this warehouse. Is that an agriculturist activity? No, because it's not a agriculturist activity. It's a another activity. So on that, if he's charging any rent, right, he's collecting rent, he's doing warehousing services. Then if his consolidated limit, that is from the production of agricultural activities, production of cultivation of land, and this the activity of uh, agriculturist activity and this renting, if this crosses 20 lakh limits, then he will have to register. So be careful. Agriculturist to the extent of supply of produce out of cultivation law of land is exempted, but others, any other services will be taxable and he will have to register for that. So some agriculturist big firms started when they may register. Yeah, if big agriculturist started, then they may be doing non-agriculturist activities also, right? Because if they're a big firm and they're doing only pure agriculturist activities, then it's fine. But if you see the definition of agriculture itself, sir, that the definition of agriculturist means an individual and HUF. It cannot be a firm or a company. An individual or a HUF who undertakes the cultivation of land on his own labor or by his own self or by the labor of his family or by servants from taking hired labor. Okay, either he should be his own labor or he should take hired labor. So, and it should be an individual and HUF. So, if it's a firm, then they are not agriculturists at all. They are not agriculturists. Then other people who are not liable for registration, people who are notified by the government. Who are these people who are notified by the person that we have already read under that exemption? No, those people. That is, persons who are making only RCM supplies. They're only making supplies on which reverse charge is payable by the recipient, like advocate, goods transport agency. On all of these supplies, only the recipient has to pay the reverse charge. So then they don't have to take registration. That is, the supplier need not take registration. Like a GTA providing services to private limited company. Reverse charge will be paid by private limited company. So this GTA, if he is doing only reverse charge supplies, then he need not register. Then, of course, we know that exception is person who is doing metal scrap supply, because metal scrap के case में supplier has to take compulsory registration. Okay. Then person who's making interstate taxable supply of services. But if you do interstate supply of goods, you have to take compulsory registration. But if you do interstate supply of services up to 20 lakhs and 10 lakhs, you will get the benefit. Then person supplying services through e-commerce, that is services from person supplying services through e-commerce, there also he will get limit of 20 lakhs and 10 lakhs. Then intrastate or interstate supply of notified handicraft goods and interstate supply of notified handicraft goods, there the limit of 20 lakhs and 10 lakhs will come. There is a procedure for it. Then a casual taxable person, he has to take compulsory registration. But if he's doing exhibition or taking a casual taxable registration for the purpose of handicraft goods, then he need not register. Then the commission agent, a commission agent or a sale of purchase who's dealing with sale or purchase of agriculture produce, right? Then he need not register, because a commission agent of agriculture produce, his services are exempted, right? So he need not register. Other commission agents has to take registration, but a commission agent of agricultural produce, there's an exception. We have seen that under the exceptions, exemptions, right? Under exemptions, a person who is in the APMC yard, he's finding the buyer and seller. He is a agricultural agent. So such agents is exempted. So here he is not taxable. Exception is principal should be a taxable person and supply made shall be taxable. But that is if he is dealing with non-agricultural goods. Because in agricultural goods, if he is dealing, ठीक है, खेत के उपजाऊ चीजें जो वो बेच देगा, ठीक है, या जो वो डायरेक्टली नहीं बेचेगा, वो बायर को आइडेंटिफाई करके सेलर के पास लेके आएगा, राइट? तो तब वो एग्जेम्पशन एक्सेम्प्टेड हो जाएगा, फिर टैक्सेबल नहीं होगा. तो कमीशन एजेंट अगर नॉन एग्रीकल्चर गुड्स कुछ सप्लाई करता है तब टैक्सेबल होगा, लेकिन एग्रीकल्चर गुड्स तो हमेशा एग्जेम्प्टेड ही रहेगा. सर हॉर्टिकल्चर, सेरिकल्चर, फिशरीज में कंपल्सरी रजिस्टर? नो, agriculture includes fish, horticulture, sericulture, so that's why they will have to, they can claim exemption. But if it's a firm, then yes, they will have to register. Horticultural company, sericulture company, fisheries company, they have to take compulsory registration. Of course, the limit of 10 lakhs and 20 lakhs will come in for that. Then another category of person who is not liable for registration is a person who is making supply of goods through e-commerce operator. Now, if you're doing only intra-state supply of goods through e-commerce operator, then you get this. Now, there are some conditions for this. The conditions are such person's turnover should not exceed the threshold limit. कि हमको पता है कि say we'll say in a city of Chennai. In Chennai, which is in the state of Tamil Nadu, it is not a special category state, right? तो वहां पे लिमिट क्या है फॉर गुड्स? 40 lakhs. So उसका टर्नओवर 40 lakhs के नीचे रहना चाहिए. That is the first threshold, first condition. Second condition is such person shall not make any interstate supply of goods. जब आप इससे बेच रहे हो, ब्लिंकेट से बेच रहे हो, और या फिर आप जेप्टो से बेच रहे हो, तो फिर आपको मिलेगा एग्जेम्पशन. बट यू शुड नॉट डू एनी इंटरस्टेट सप्लाई. कि आप इंटरस्टेट भी सप्लाई करो और ये भी बोलो कि मैं इंट्रास्टेट सप्लाई थ्रू ई कॉमर्स कर रहा हूं तो मुझे एग्जेम्पशन मिलेगा? नहीं, दोनों लड्डू आपको नहीं मिलेगी. यू कैन गेट बेनिफिट ऑफ ओनली वन. ओके, सो यू हैव टू गेट ओनली बेनिफिट ऑफ ओनली वन. First is such persons should not exceed the threshold limit in the preceding financial year and the current financial year. दोनों साल में, that is 40 lakhs, 40 lakhs last year और इस year में क्रॉस नहीं होना चाहिए. Such person shall not make any interstate supply of goods. Such person shall not make supply of goods through an e-commerce operator in more than one state. क्योंकि जेप्टो वगैरह में जब आप करोगे तब आपको एक ही स्टेट में करना पड़ेगा. अगर आप दो स्टेट में भी कर रहे हो, दूसरे स्टेट में भी एक ब्रांच ओपन कर रहे हो, तो फिर आपको ये बेनिफिट नहीं मिलेगा. सो इट इज गिवन टू प्योर दोज पीपल हु आर वेरी स्मॉल, दैट इज दे आर डीलिंग ओनली इन वन स्टेट. इफ यू आर हैविंग, सी ठीक है, जेप्टो यहाँ पे फेमस हो गया है, सो यू आर सप्लाइंग हियर, सो जेप्टो इज गॉन टू चेन्नई, आई विल गेट रजिस्ट्रेशन देयर ऑल्सो. नहीं, तो फिर आपको बेनिफिट नहीं मिलेगा. So you should make supply of goods through e-commerce operator, not more than one state. Then such person shall be required to have a PAN. तो उनके पास बेसिक पैन तो होना चाहिए. And such person shall, before making any supply of goods through e-commerce, declare on the portal. तो उनको पोर्टल में डिक्लेरेशन देना पड़ेगा कि मैं इतना सप्लाई कर रहा हूँ. Because government should know whether they have crossed the threshold limit, so they have to just make a declaration. They don't have to file any returns. And they should make a declaration, their PAN, the address of their business, the state in which such persons seek to make supply, and which shall be subjected to validation. So all of this will be validated. Then such persons has been granted an enrollment number. तो उनको एक enrollment number दिया जाएगा based on the PAN, not the GST number, but a separate enrollment number. And they should be having only one enrollment number. इफ दे आर हैविंग मल्टीपल एनरोलमेंट नंबर्स तो फिर उनको बेनिफिट नहीं मिलेगा. Then no supply of goods shall be made by such persons through e-commerce unless such person has been granted an enrollment. तो फर्स्ट एनरोलमेंट नंबर लेना पड़ेगा, तभी वो ई कॉमर्स को सप्लाई कर सकते हैं. एंड वेयर सच पर्सन आर सब्सिक्वेंटली ग्रांटेड रजिस्ट्रेशन, तो उनको ठीक कि when will they be getting the registration subsequently? Once they cross the limit. So if they cross the limit, then the enrollment number will deem to be cancelled. क्योंकि आप एनरोलमेंट नंबर और रजिस्ट्रेशन दोनों नहीं रख सकते, यू शुड कीप ओनली वन. अगर आप एनरोलमेंट रखते हो देन यू शुड कीप ओनली एनरोलमेंट नंबर. क्लियर विद दिस? Instamart Zepto linking provided no interstate. Correct. We need to see definition of handicraft goods. Yes, we'll come to that. Handicraft goods, sir, कुछ चाहिए? Kuldeep, handicraft goods are goods which are made up of leather articles, carved wood products, wood turnings, bamboo products, textile hand printing, theater costumes, musical instruments, dolls, and toys. Okay, which are basically made either of leather or wood products. These basic things which are done, they are called as handicraft products. Clear है यहाँ तक? So basically what we are saying under 23, that persons who is engaged exclusively in supplying goods or services, both not liable to tax, then need not take registration. Agriculturist, persons making only supply of reverse charge, persons making interstate supply of taxable services, uska limit up to 20 lakhs, persons making interstate taxable supply of notified handicraft goods, casual taxable person dealing with notified handicraft goods, and person who is doing an intrastate supply of goods through a quick commerce. These people need not take registration. Okay, let's move forward. Today I'm not seeing that thing because is the registration very theoretical subject? Yes, it is. But if you ask questions or if you're having any doubt, you want me to repeat it, I will repeat it. But let's not make this class so very silent. Please ask your questions. After 24, after 23, I've given you sufficient break. You think over it. Is there any question in your minds? Because 25 is procedural. It is more dry. Okay. Whatever masala was there was in 22, which you all participated very nicely in the last session. 25 compulsory registration, 23 registration not required. इसमें कुछ doubt है? No questions, Kuldeep. Okay. Mustafa, sir, your explanation is so way to point. I don't have any question. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. Sir, you just ask questions. We can go deep. Ah, awesome. Very nice. So you've grasped the topic so very well that you can understand things very clearly. Good. I hope that's a compliment and everybody is in the same page. Yes, very nice. There are illustrations in books we can do. Yes, yes, we can do it so that we can grasp this. Can you tell me the page number, Mustafa, so that I can go through the illustrations which is given in the book itself? 9.28. Okay, let's take some illustration from the study material. 9.28. Okay, I will take that. I can understand easily. Sir, if possible, you can ask some question in middle. Sure, I will do that. Page 9.28 and 9.29. Sure, Pooja. 9.28 and 9.28. Sharmila, 9.28. Okay, excellent. So we will go to 9.28 and 9.29. Yeah, screen is visible. Examine with reason whether registration is required under GST Act in the following independent cases. Aadav Computers of Gujarat is providing computer maintenance service. Aggregate turnover of Aadav Computer is 15 lakhs, which comprises both interstate and intrastate supply. So in this case, is registration required or no? No, threshold is 20 lakh. Okay. Required as it is interstate supply. That's another answer. Registration required as per section 24 cause interstate supplier is required. Okay. Registration is not required. Okay. So basically two types of answers I'm getting. One is saying registration not required because it's below 20 lakhs. Another answer is that since interstate is required, don't see that 20 lakhs limit. No, because it is interstate supply of services. Threshold limit. Okay. Not required as threshold is less than 20 lakhs. No. I think both the answers are wrong because you're not giving me the correct reasoning. Reasoning is also important. As it is providing interstate supply, it has to be registered irrespective of limits. But there is an exception, right? People who are saying that it is interstate supply, we will not see the limits. There is an exception which we read. Is he supplying goods or supplying services? Services, right? We know that it is services. Just because we saw the computer word, we should not be carried away that it is goods. Is providing maintenance of those computers, right? Computer maintenance services. So it's a service. So in case of interstate supply, we read that if he's making interstate supply, first registration is compulsory. But then we said that there is an exception. The exception here they're specified through notification. You don't have to write the notification. Wherein it said that exception is available in case of interstate supply of services, interstate supply of taxable services. Therefore, even though he is making interstate supply, since his limit is below 20 lakhs, he will not be required to register. So people are giving two incomplete answers. You have to give complete answer saying that firstly, registration is compulsory since he's making interstate supply, but there is a notification which gives an exemption exception to that rule, and it says that you do not have to register if you're making interstate taxable supply of services. So in this case he's making interstate taxable supply of services, so he need not register because his turnover is below 20 lakhs. You remember, right, our slide where we said compulsory registration 24 at the start of the session and gave some exception. where there were two exceptions. First is interstate supply of services, and second is intrastate supply of handicraft goods. Now is that clear what we were discussing? Clear now? Very nice. Yes, sir. Carried away cause reading interstate. Yes. Just don't get carried away. Every word and our understanding linkage is important. So this is a classic example that where questions can confuse you. Okay. Next, Soft Wings of West Bengal is exclusively trading in garments. He supplies its taxable goods in various states of India from its outlet in West Bengal. Aggregate turnover of Soft Wings is 35 lakhs. And West Bengal, the limit is 40 lakhs for goods. Okay, so it is 40 lakhs for goods and his turnover is below 40 lakhs. So should he take compulsory registration or no? Yes, he has to. Shamli, because interstate supply of goods and there is no exemption, so he has to register. Okay, where 40 lakh mentioned in question. 40 lakh is not mentioned, Baba. 35 lakhs is mentioned. 40 lakhs you have to apply because for goods the limit is 40 lakhs. Now you know that which state what limit is applicable. Interstate supply of goods, then compulsory registration relevant to 40 lakhs threshold compulsory registration. Okay. I think he is doing interstate supply of goods to section 24. He has to compulsory register. Yes, Pooja Bayal. Yes, correct. Yes, correct, Pooja. It's engaged in interstate supply of goods, so he has to register. Right. So I feel also that's the correct answer. The threshold limit for registration in the state of Bengal for persons engaged exclusive in supply of goods is 40 lakhs. However, registration is compulsory if the supplier is engaged in interstate supply of goods, irrespective of the quantum of aggregate turnover. The threshold exemption is not available. Therefore, soft wings is required to obtain registration. Right? Here, illustration number two. Okay. Illustration number two. Examine whether the liability to register compulsory under 24 arises in each of the independent cases. Meenu, a supplier in Maharashtra, is exclusively engaged in supply of potatoes produced out of cultivation of her own land within Maharashtra and also outside Maharashtra. Agriculturist making intrastate supply and interstate supply. Not required. Agriculture produce not liable to get registered. Okay. Mino is not required for agriculture produce. Okay. Agriculture है so नहीं है. Mino doesn't require to register because he is doing agriculture produce. Okay. Correct. So is a supplier in Maharashtra is exclusively engaged in supply of potatoes produced out of the cultivation. Right? So the answer is he is exclusively engaged in supply of potatoes. So therefore, registration is not required. Provided a person making any interstate supply of goods who are required to obtain registration. However, so you should always start with section 24 compulsory registration that he is required. Then you have to draw attention to section 23, wherein to the extent of supply of produce, he is not liable to register. Therefore, Minu will not be liable for registration even if her turnover exceeds the threshold limit. Even if her limit exceeds the threshold limit, not required to register. Any limit? Yes, any limit. कुछ भी business कर सकता है if it's doing only purely agricultural produce. Yeah. Next illustration. Genu Oils. Gujarat is engaged in supplying machine oil as well as petroleum. Further, it provides intrastate services of refining of oil to customers. Total turnover of supply of machine oil is 10 lakhs, supply of petroleum is 5 lakhs, and supply of services is 6 lakhs. Limit for services because Gujarat limit is 40 lakhs. But he's making interstate services of refining of oil. Geno Oils is liable to register under GST as its aggregate turnover of 21 lakhs exceeds the threshold of 20 lakhs. Okay. Is that the reason? But he's dealing in petrol also. Petrol is not liable to GST. Adil is saying not required. What's the reason? Petrol supply is outside of purview of GST and supply of service up to 20 lakhs not required to register. Okay. Not required as involved in intrastate supply and petroleum supply. Okay. So what will be his aggregate turnover? Petrol is not under GST. Yes, petroleum is not under GST. Threshold limit for compulsory registration for supplier of goods is generally 40 lakhs or 20 lakhs for special categories. Since Geno Oil is also supplying services, the threshold limit is 20 lakhs. Correct. So the threshold limit will apply 20 lakhs and the threshold will include all supplies, even non-taxable supplies. So the limit is 10 plus 5 plus 6, 21 lakhs. So he will have to take registration. Section 24 specifies the categories who are required to mandatory register. In this case, Geno Oils does not fall in any of those specified categories, so compulsory registration is not applicable, but the threshold limit will apply. The applicable threshold for Gujarat is 20 lakhs for goods and services. Since Geno Oil is liable to obtain registration, since his aggregate turnover is 21 lakh rupees, it exceeds the limit of 20 lakhs, so he will have to register. Yes. 20 lakhs is his aggregate turnover, so he has to register. Turnover will be 15 lakhs, taxable turnover may be 15 lakhs, but aggregate turnover, Mustafa, is 21 lakhs. While calculating aggregate turnover, sir, well, whether petrol supply will be added? Yes, less, because petroleum is outside the scope of GST, and exempt services include any supply which is outside the scope of CGST. And in aggregate turnover, exempt supply is also included. So you will include the supplies which are outside the GST also to calculate the aggregate turnover. You will not pay tax on it, but you will include it for the purpose of calculating aggregate turnover. Registration required, but tax payment is not there on petroleum. Right. So in case of agriculture, if he's producing silk related produce, he can claim exemption. Yes. It's a agriculture produced, he can claim exemption. Okay. Next, third question. Tilu is working as an agent. Yeah, this is a very good question. He is supplying taxable goods as an agent of TICU, who is registered taxable person, and its aggregate turnover does not exceed the applicable threshold limit during the financial year. Invoices to customers are issued in the name of TILU. That is, the agent only issues the invoice. So is he liable for registration here or no? Required, as he's an agent, it's compulsory. That's not the correct answer. Section 24 provides that a person who makes taxable supply of goods or services on behalf of another taxable person, whether as an agent or otherwise, are required to obtain registration. Therefore, TILU will be mandatorily required. Correct. So your answer is correct, Adil. That is an agent, so compulsory required. And it is saying that he is raising an invoice in his own name itself. So he's an agent itself, right? So when he is supplying any goods or services on behalf of other taxable person, whether as an agent or otherwise, he is required to obtain compulsory registration, irrespective of the quantum of turnover, because 24 is a compulsory registration. So TILU will be mandatorily required to be take the registration. But if he's taking invoice in his own name, right? Because here the circumstances says that yeah, invoices to customers are issued in the name of TILU, but he is acting as an agent of PICO. So if he is acting as an agent, compulsory registration is required. Okay. So what we'll do is we have understood 23, 24. We'll take a break of 10 minutes and continue with the procedural aspects there. Okay. and registration not required scenarios. Now we'll move to the procedural aspect, that is section 25. What is the procedure for registration? First is, once you have to register, you have to apply for registration in a registration application form. The application is called Form REG01. That is the online form. It is a form, and it's an online form where you can submit the details. Okay, so this form is called Form GST REG01. So, like how we had GSTR 2B, we had GSTR 3B. Like that, for getting the registration, you have to go to the GST portal and fill your basic details in REG01. You'll get a temporary number. With that temporary number, you have to fill in those other details and submit the application. Then your registration will get, you will get the registration certificate. Okay. UIN, before getting into the procedure for registration, important terms which you have to understand is, one is UIN, which means unique identification number, is a centralized UIN and applicable to the whole territory of India. So people who are having, like, to whom UIN itself is applicable, UIN is applicable to people who are having registration, or a branch or a kind of arm of a United Nations, because United Nations is there in a different country. Now they want to set up in India, right? So any agency of the United Nations organizations, UNO, or a multinational financial institutions, anybody or a consulate or an embassy office who wants to set up in India, they will get a UIN number. They will not get a normal registration number. What is the use of this UIN? Will they do any supply? They will not do any supply, but they will take services from Indian entities. So once they take services from Indian entities, we will charge GST because there is no exception. So once we charge GST, they will get affected to that extent, because for them, there is no income which they can offset this input with. Correct? So they will take this, all the purchases on which we will charge the GST and claim the refund. So that's the reason UIN will be given to such entities. And one UIN is sufficient for them. Unlike GST normal registration, where for each state we have to take separate registration, but a UIN holder need not take separate registration. Only UIN is a centralized registration, one registration across India. Okay. Next is SEZ. Who is a SEZ? A supplier who is supplying a branch or a special zone which is set up by the government, and they're saying that from this zone you will get duty free, your taxation will be free, and you can supply goods outside India. It's a special economic zone for exporting, right? You will do a lot of exports in that zone, so there's a specialized zone. They will get a lot of tax benefits. So SEZ, even though it is in some state, because it's not like in a different place, will be within a state, but earmark or separate boundary will be there for it, and they will call it as a special economic zone. Now, any entity which is there in this SEZ zone, okay, they will export goods, and say in that same state I have a registration, or I have a office outside the SEZ zone. So can I take one registration in that state and say SEZ is one branch and domestic is one branch? No. SEZ, even though if it is in the same state, you will have to take separate registration for a SEZ unit. So SEZ is considered to be a place outside India for tax purposes. Even though it is in the state, it is within India, but it is given a special procedure that it is treated as a outside the state. That's why when you are supplying anything to a SEZ unit, it is treated as a zero rated supply, because it is equivalent to an export supply. So when you export, you're supplying outside India. Similarly, when you're supplying to SEZ, that is also treated like supply outside India. That is also equivalent to zero rated supply. Okay, so SEZ you have to take separate registration, and another branch within the same state you have to take separate registration. Next is casual taxable person and a non-resident taxable person. Who is a casual taxable person? A person who is not having fixed place of business in a state, like we have given the example of an exhibition holder. He's not having a fixed establishment in another state. from where he wants to make a supply, he is a casual taxable person. But a non-resident taxable person, he does not have a fixed establishment in India at all. He does not have a fixed place of business or residence in India. He is treated as a non-resident taxable person. A CTP need to register in every state from where he wants to do business. In his state, he will do it, but in any other state where he wants to do this business, right, where he's not having a fixed establishment in that state, every state from where he does the business, there he has to take registration as a casual taxable person. And NRTP has to also register in the state from where he wants to make the supply. He wants to come to Gujarat and sell something in Gujarat, he has to take registration. He wants to tell something in Andhra Pradesh, he will take a registration in Andhra Pradesh. So each place, each state where he goes, he has to take a separate registration. But the common points of both of them is CTP and NRT cannot opt for composition scheme, right? Composition scheme is a special benefit where you can supply at a lower rate and no input tax credit. A CTP and NRT, both people cannot opt for composition scheme, and there is no centralized scheme for both of them. Every state where they go, they have to take registration. Okay. What is the timeline for application? General application. What is the timeline? If you are normally registering, then you should apply for registration within 30 days from the date on which he becomes liable for registration. So once your threshold limit crosses, then you have to register within 30 days. Okay. So we know the threshold limit. We have read the threshold limit. We have seen the chart on the threshold limit. So if you cross this threshold limit, within 30 days, you have to apply for registration. That is the timeline for registration. But for a CTP and NRTP, this normal registration, we are saying at least once you cross the limit, after that within 30 days, right? But for a CTP and NRTP, you have to apply it before itself. You have to apply 5 days prior to the commencement. Matlab, a CTP and NRTP cannot go to the business and then take the registration. No. He has to take the registration 5 days in advance. Matlab, at least 20 days before he has to go to that place, apply for registration, get the registration, and then start the business. If he doesn't get the registration, he can't start the business because it will be illegal. GST law says that a person who is a CTP, he has to take the registration in advance. So he has to take the registration in advance. One registration, one state, no centralized registration for both of them. Then if they have multiple places of business in one state, if you are having a set up a head office, you have branch office, then for those branch office, you need not take separate registration. You can include it in the main registration and add those places as additional place of business. So PPOB means principal place of business, which is the main head office, and additional place of business is the additional places. Okay. So principal place of business and additional place of business will come in the registration certificate itself. Which principal place you want, that principal place will come as principal place of business, and all other branches will come as additional place of business. But if you're saying, no, I need separate registration for that branches, then you can take separate registration. No stoppage. Okay. Next, option to obtain independent registration with respect to each such separate place of business is also possible. Apply separate registration. So if you want one registration, then one REG1. If you want separate registration, apply separate REG1s. Then composition levy, if it is opted for regular in one place, then cannot opt for composition for any other place. So if you're opting for composition in one place, other places also you have to opt for composition only. Or if you're opting for composition one and registration another, that's not possible. So that composition place also you have to go for regular scheme only. Okay? Because if one place, if opted for regular in one place, then cannot opt for composition for any other place of business. If one place is ineligible, then all other places also becomes ineligible. Okay. In case of CPTC, CTP, yeah, they have to take separate registration for each branch. Yes. सर अगर PHLE रेगुलर पहले रेगुलर है देन कॉम्पोजिशन लिया है टू रेगुलर को कॉम्पोजिशन करना पड़ेगा. पहले रेगुलर है उसको कॉम्पोजिशन करना है. करेक्ट. सो देन यू हैव टू ट्रांसफर योर कन्वर्ट योर रजिस्ट्रेशन. राइट. Voluntary registration. Another type is that when you have not crossed the threshold limit, but still you want to register. क्यों? क्योंकि आपको बहुत सारे benefits हैं. आपको ITC credit मिलेगा and you can collect taxes from the customer. So you're saying, okay, मेरा compulsory registration नहीं है, but still I want to take voluntary registration. I want to take registration before I touch the limit. That is called as voluntary registration. So voluntary registration is possible. Yes, voluntary registration is also possible. Wherein it is saying that when you are not liable for registration under 22 or under 24. 24 is the threshold limit, 24 is compulsory registration. दोनों में आप fall नहीं करते हो, but still आपको registration लेना है, then you can take, that is called as voluntary registration. Once you're registered, okay, then you cannot say नहीं मेरा तो limit कम है मैं अभी नहीं pay करूंगा. नहीं. Once registered, then all the provisions of ITC you can take the benefit and all the output tax you have to pay it. Okay? Then the concept of distinct person, very important. When you have multiple registrations in one state, एक state में आपके जैसे है मैंने बोला additional place of business, principal place of business हो सकता है. So then that is one registration. But if you do not have that, if you have separate registrations for separate states, separate registration for separate branches. Within one state, you have multiple branches, सबके registration ले लिए है. Then each of this are called as distinct persons. And second is you have registration in one state and establishment in another state. They are also distinct person. वो other state वाला registered हो या unregistered doesn't matter. You are registered in one state and in another state you have a branch. Then they are also called as distinct persons. Sir, if registration taken in principal place, that is Lucknow, then if I transfer my business to Kanpur, then what to do? So then you have to close your registration in Lucknow and take new registration in Kanpur. No, you cannot run the business in same number. Now, tell me whether Lucknow and Kanpur are in the same state. अगर सेम स्टेट में है देन यू कैन टेक द ट्रांसफर. तो फिर आपको कैंसिल करने की जरूरत नहीं है. बोथ आर इन द सेम स्टेट. तो फिर you can tell that principal place of business is getting changed. Officer will come and check that new address. If he is satisfied, he will change the registration. Same state mein, to then possible. Notes you can also saw you where in this topics in books. No, because my flow is different. Because in the material you have sections, then the rules, and then the explanation. I'm directly going through the explanation. So correlating will happen, but once you read this, you can read that very easily. What will be principal place of business for CTP? Wherever, so there he will not have principal place of business and additional place of business. Wherever he is setting up or that exhibition place, that will be the principal place of business. The place where he wants to do the business, that is the principal place of business. Have to upload the change principal place of business proof? Yes, you have to. So in case of any mall which have a head office in other place having registration number, if they want to open branches in other state, they have to take another registration and he can run through head office. No, if he's doing a business in one state and he is doing a business in another state, then in that state, he has to take separate registration. He cannot run through the head office registration. Okay. Now, what are the documents necessary compulsory? PAN is compulsory for all types of registration. Even if a CTP, he will have to take a PAN. But a NRTP, for him, PAN is not required because he is a non-resident person. You can't expect PAN from him. For him, passport is necessary as a registration document. Person with section 51, that is, section 51 is person who wants to deduct TDS. He need not have a PAN. He can have a PAN number. That also is sufficient. Unique identification number, specialized agency of United Nations for claiming refund. They are not registered persons, so no return will be filed. They will get a centralized UIN. They will issue UIN within 3 working days, special treatment for them, and they can claim refund of whatever taxes has been charged to them. Suo moto registration. Now, various types of registration we have seen: compulsory registration, voluntary registration. Now, the suo moto registration. Suo moto registration is registration on the own account. I did not apply, but the officer has given me the registration. Why? Because I crossed the limit and I have not registered. But the officer is saying, no, your limit is crossed. We have proof. So, where he is satisfied that your limit is crossed through investigation, search, or whatever is the procedure, he is able to find out that you are crossed the limit. In such cases, the officer can himself take the details and give you a suo moto registration. Now, this suo moto registration is a temporary registration wherein the officer is giving you, because based on this, you have to submit other documents, then your registration will become permanent. So, the temporary registration will be valid for 90 days and you have to submit the application within that time. Or you're saying, no, no, the officer has not considered my exemption. I am exempted, but so for me, registration is not required. So if you're saying that, then you have to file an appeal. If you file an appeal, then the officer will hear and dispose the case. If he says, no, no, you have to apply for registration, then you have to. If the officer says, no, what you're saying is right, then your temporary registration will get cancelled. So you have two routes. Once you get the temporary registration number from the officer, apply the documents within 90 days, make it permanent. Second option is file an appeal. From the result of the appeal, there can be two things. Officer will agree saying that, yes, your appeal is right. You do not have to take registration. Then the temporary registration number will get cancelled. Or he says, no, you have to register. Then you have no other option. You have to take the registration and submit the document again within 90 days. Yeah, questions here. What do you mean by suo moto? On his own account? I mentioned here, no? Suo moto means on his own account. On the own account of the officer, he gives you a registration without you applying it. That is called suo moto registration. This temporary registration is for 90 days. So इसके लिए हमको 90 days time मिलता है. I will check this. 90 days ये भैया. Clear, confirmed. In suo moto registration, they may pay extra interest to officer. Not extra interest, they will give a registration. Then the officer will determine the liability and then you have to pay the tax and interest, etc. But registration per se, you don't have to pay anything. For the purpose of registration, you don't have to pay any tax. In case notice from department, yes, various cases, they may give this. So TRN is temporary registration number. Yes, TRN is temporary registration number. Now, what is the procedure for registration? Normal registration, you apply through REG 01. All taxable persons, casual taxable person, voluntary registration, everybody will apply through REG 01 itself. Special registration procedure is only for NRTP, TDS, TCS, OIDR, because they are all outside India or they're not having any supplies. So for REG 01 is for majorly for everybody, for all taxable persons, casual taxable person, voluntary registration person, and composition levy person. Special registration procedure is there for NRTP, TDS, TCS, OIDR, and person who's supplying online money gaming from outside India. SEZ, as we had discussed, even if you're having a place in the same state, take separate registration for the SEZ unit or the SEZ developer. Now, what is the registration procedure? सबके लिए REG 1 होगा, लेकिन जो स्पेशल प्रोसीजर वाला है उनके लिए अलग होगा नवनीत. ओके, रजिस्ट्रेशन प्रोसीजर. अप्लाई फॉर रजिस्ट्रेशन थ्रू REG 01. इसमें आपको क्या क्या डिटेल देना है? आपको पैन देना है, मोबाइल नंबर देना, ईमेल आईडी देना. फर्स्ट रजिस्ट्रेशन में यू डोंट हैव अ रजिस्ट्रेशन नंबर, आप डायरेक्टली जीएसटी पोर्टल पे जाएंगे, gst.gov.in. वहां पे अप्लाई फॉर रजिस्ट्रेशन आएगा, क्लिक ऑन दैट. REG 1 फॉर्म खुलेगा, उसमें 3 डिटेल पूछेगा. पैन नंबर डालिए. पैन नंबर डालने पे आपका वेरिफिकेशन करेंगे. विथ वॉट? विद द इनकम टैक्स पोर्टल. इनकम टैक्स पोर्टल के पास आपके पान का डेटाबेस है, जहां पे क्रॉस एक्सचेंज करके दे विल validate the numbers and your name what you're giving. Then mobile number, how will they verify? Through a OTP. Email ID, again through a OTP sent to the mobile, send, give it to the portal. Then all these 3 things are validated. Once these 3 things are validated, you will get a application reference number. This is called as ARN number, application reference number, which you will use for reference purpose. Application reference number में आपके, with that application reference number, you will submit all the required documents. What are the documents? I will tell you, but understand the flow. With the application number, you will submit all the documents. आपके documents submit हो गए. Now, once you submit this documents, you will get a acknowledgement in REG 02. In the REG 02 will be an acknowledgement saying that हाँ आपका application हमको मिल गया है. Okay. Now with REG 2 आपका document सब पोर्टल पे अपलोड हो गया है. With this documents what we have submitted, if all the documents are complete, then you will get your certificate of registration. Simple. If all the documents you submit correctly, then you will get a registration certificate. Registration certificate is given through form REG 06. If no, if your documents are incomplete, right, then you will get a notice. Notice में क्या होगा कि you have not submitted all your details, give me your details. This details you have to give the they'll give a list, officer will verify it and say that these are the documents which is missing. Then you will give a clarification in REG 02. So see the flow: REG 1, then REG 2, then REG 3, then REG 4. REG 3 mein you will ask the notice wherein you will ask for additional details and provide the details and clarifications in REG 05 within 7 days. If everything is fine, right? Then you will come back to this. आपको REG6 में registration मिलेगा. If officer is not satisfied, then he has to reject your application. ऐसा नहीं कि application submit करने पे automatic registration मिलेगा, नहीं. If he is not satisfied, he will reject it. Call it as REG05, called as rejection of registration application. ठीक है, simple, but there are complications. Let's understand this, that once if I submit all the documents in REG01, then I will get REG06. If I don't get, then the procedure of REG3, 4, 5 will come. ठीक है. Now, part 2 says that जो time limit है वो थोड़ा change हुआ है. पहले just 3 days वगैरह था. That was causing lot of pressure to the officer. So then they reduced it. They increased it. If the proper officer examines the application and accompanying documents, if same are found in order, if everything is found in order, then he gets 7 days time limit. पहले 3 दिन था, अभी 7 days time मिल गया है ऑफिसर को कि हाँ डॉक्यूमेंट सही है. Then he has to grant your registration within 7 working days. Okay, when the two एक नया clause लेके आ गया है, you will get it within 7 days if your application is successfully validated through your Aadhaar authentication. अगर आपने आधार नंबर देके authenticate करवाया है, then it is 7 days. If not, then the time limit will increase. Okay? 7 working days, fine. अगर आपका आधार ऑथेंटिकेट किया है. हाउ डू वी डू आधार ऑथेंटिकेशन? दैट ऑल्सो इट्स अ प्रोसीजर. बट नाउ अंडरस्टैंड कि टाइम लिमिट क्या है. आधार ऑथेंटिकेटेड है तो फिर 7 वर्किंग डेज में आपको रजिस्ट्रेशन मिलेगा. फिर एप्लीकेशन फेल्स टू अंडरगो आधार ऑथेंटिकेशन, आपने आधार ऑथेंटिकेशन नहीं किया है या फिर ऑफिसर को लगता है कि आपका रजिस्ट्रेशन फेक रजिस्ट्रेशन है, और पर्सन हु हैज अंडरगॉन आधार ऑथेंटिकेशन इज आइडेंटिफाइड on the common portal to be a based on data analysis and risk parameters to carry out site verification. क्योंकि आपका रिस्की है, आपने पहले भी अप्लाई किया है और आपका रिस्क कैटेगरी में आइडेंटिफाई हुआ है, then what will happen? Registration will be granted within 30 days. Why? क्योंकि 7 वर्किंग डेज में ऑफिसर इंस्पेक्शन के लिए नहीं आएगा. लेकिन सेकेंड केस में इन एनी ऑफ दीज थिंग्स वेयर यू हैव नॉट ऑथेंटिकेटेड योर आधार, your officer feels that he has to carry verification, or your PAN number is reflected and in the portal as a data as a risk parameter में आ गया है आपका, तो फिर ऑफिसर को आके वेरिफिकेशन करना पड़ेगा. That's why he will get additional time to do verification. Then your registration will be granted within 30 days. Okay. That too when if everything is found in order. If it is not found in order, then he will ask for issue a notice and ask for clarification, right? If proper officer issues notice thereby seeking clarification, information or documents from the applicant electronically, then you will submit it. If you are satisfied, then he will grant the registration once you submit the documents uske 7 days mein. Or if he is not satisfied with the documents, he will reject it. Now, if proper officer issues notice within 30 days from the application submitted date or within 7 working days, that is, if he is not satisfied, then he has again 2 times. If Aadhaar is authenticated within 7 days, if Aadhaar is not authenticated, then 30 days. So, see the time limit which the officer will have. अगर आपका आधार ऑथेंटिकेटेड है तो आपका ऐसा नहीं कि ऑटोमेटिक अप्रूवल होगा. ऑफ कोर्स ही कैन रिजेक्ट इट, बट रिजेक्शन भी उसको या फिर उसका क्वेरीज जो नोटिस देना है, ही हैज टू गिव दैट नोटिस विद इन 7 days बिकॉज यू हैव ऑथेंटिकेटेड योर आधार. अगर आधार ऑथेंटिकेटेड नहीं है तो फिर he will reject it or give a notice at the end of 30th day, and then again extra 30 days he will get. Got it? So what should we do if officer did not reject registration? If he is not rejected, then it will be deemed registration. अगर उसने more than this timeline जो हमने दिया है, right? Within this timeline, if they don't grant registration, आपका registration automatic approve हो जाएगा. If the officer fails to take any action in the following cases within the stipulated time, the application for grant of registration shall be deemed to have been approved. When in cases where the person has successfully undergone authentication of Aadhaar or is exempt from Aadhaar authentication within period of 7 days, and in cases where he fails to undergo Aadhaar authentication within a period of 30 days. In cases where proper officer issues notice seeking clarification, then 7 working days from the date of receipt of clarification, in case Aadhaar is authenticated, and in other case, 30 days. Clear? ठीक है, क्लियर है यहाँ तक? That Aadhaar authentication has to be done. That's the timeline. So basically, you can understand अगर आधार authentication है 7 days, non आधार authentication 30 days, and अगर reject हो गया notice और आपने reply किया, then within 7 working days from the date of receipt of clarification, we will have to give the registration या फिर reject करना चाहिए. ठीक है. Next, Aadhaar authentication will be for whom? Aadhaar authentication will be only for an individual who is a citizen of India, right? Because Aadhaar is given to only people who are citizens of India. So a person who is citizen of India, उसी का Aadhaar authentication हो सकता है. A person who is not a citizen, he cannot get the Aadhaar. So then it is not mandatory. Authorized signatory of all types, that is मैनेजिंग और ऑथराइज पार्टनर्स और करता. अगर इंडिविजुअल है तो इंडिविजुअल का ऑथेंटिकेशन करना पड़ेगा. अगर फर्म है तो फिर उसके पार्टनर का, और अगर कंपनी है तो मैनेजिंग डायरेक्टर का. सो दीज आर द पीपल हुज आधार यू हैव टू गेट ऑथेंटिकेटेड. आधार ऑथेंटिकेशन एग्जेम्पशन भी मिलता है वेयर अ पर्सन इज नॉट अ सिटीजन ऑफ इंडिया, अ पर्सन हु इज अ डिपार्टमेंट और एस्टेब्लिशमेंट ऑफ द सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट और स्टेट गवर्नमेंट. क्योंकि अगर सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट और स्टेट गवर्नमेंट है तो उनका ऑलरेडी डॉक्यूमेंट गवर्नमेंट के पास रहेगा, तो उनका आधार ऑथेंटिकेशन फिर से जरूरी नहीं है. A local authority, a statutory body, basically government entities, a local authority, a statutory body, a public sector undertaking, or a person applying for UIN. For these people, Aadhaar authentication is exempted. इनको Aadhaar authentication करने की जरूरत नहीं है. Sir, if Aadhaar authentication and 7 days lapsed and certificate is not issued, then you can write directly to the GST grievance saying that I have applied for registration, I have not received any deficiency, and I have not received the certificate as well. They will initiate it and grant you the registration certificate, because the officer portal उनके डैशबोर्ड में भी दिखेगा कि आपको विद इन 7 days रजिस्ट्रेशन देना है. अगर आप नहीं दोगे तो फिर ऑटोमेटिक अप्रूवल हो जाएगा. बट दे ऑलवेज हैव दिस कंट्रोल, नो प्रॉब्लम विद इट. Risk based biometric based Aadhaar authentication, wherein the registration rules have introduced a new biometric based Aadhaar authentication कि आपका जो है आधार ऑथेंटिकेशन सिर्फ ऑनलाइन ओटीपी देने से नहीं होगा. यू हैव टू गो टू द प्लेसेस, जैसे गुजरात, पुदुचेरी, आंध्र प्रदेश में अभी ये किया है कि आपको बायोमेट्रिक देके वेरीफाई करना पड़ेगा. क्योंकि क्या होता है, बहुत सारे रजिस्ट्रेशन फेक रजिस्ट्रेशन लेते हैं और आईटीसी वगैरह पास करके भाग जाता है. सो टू अवॉइड दैट, व्हाट द गवर्नमेंट इज सेइंग इज दैट वी विल कम अप विद अ बायोमेट्रिक बेस्ड आधार ऑथेंटिकेशन. की वो आएंगे, बायोमेट्रिक चेक करेंगे, या आपको वहां पे जाना पड़ेगा. बायोमेट्रिक बेस्ड आधार सेंटर्स में आपको जाना पड़ेगा, और फिर बायोमेट्रिक चेक होने पे ही आपका आधार ऑथेंटिकेटेड होगा. आधार ऑथेंटिकेशन के बाद भी अगर हाई रिस्क में जाता है, यस। आधार ऑथेंटिकेशन के बाद भी अगर हाई रिस्क में जाता है, देन यस, फिर 30 days लग सकता है। Biometric in one state is enough, or we have to attend all states in which CTP? Yeah, in all the states, unfortunately, because CTP या फिर multiple registration लेते हो, then each state you have to take it separately. There's not any type of consideration required for registration. No consideration. Online you apply, no consideration is required. Yes, Gujarat, Puducherry, and Andhra Pradesh is what is relevant for your exams. But actually, अभी तो सभी states में हो गया है. But अपने question के लिए, अपने exam के लिए, it is, I think only Gujarat. Okay. Now it is in all the states. Initially, it was Gujarat and this, but I'll tell you the amendment, and it is applicable in all the states. Once an application has been filed and the applicant has opted for authentication of Aadhaar, it shall be followed by biometric based Aadhaar authentication and taking photographs of the applicant. तो biometric based Aadhaar authentication होगा और applicant का फोटो लिया जाएगा। आर ऑथराइज पर्सन इन केस ऑफ अ नॉन इंडिविजुअल। अगर इंडिविजुअल है तो फिर प्रोपराइटर का, अगर इंडिविजुअल नहीं है तो फिर एज यूजुअल पार्टनर का या मैनेजिंग डायरेक्टर का रहेगा। देन दिस प्रोसेस शैल हैपन एट द नोटिफाइड फैसिलिटेशन सेंटर। होने के बाद आपको एक एक्नॉलेजमेंट दिया जाएगा। KYC is biometric. Only Aadhaar is biometric because all other KYC they don't do it. So if someone asks us to take registration, then we have to do biometric authentication. Yes, we will have to do the biometric authentication of that person. So किसका आधार ऑथेंटिकेशन करना पड़ेगा? प्रोपराइटरशिप का, प्रोपराइटर का, पार्टनरशिप फर्म का, एज आई सेड पार्टनर्स। HUF के केस में कर्ता का करना पड़ेगा। कंपनी के केस में ऑथराइज सिग्नेटरी या फिर डायरेक्टर। कंपनी इट्स अ फॉरेन कंपनी, देन ऑथराइज पर्सन इन चार्ज इन इंडिया। फॉरेन कंपनी है but they cannot say that we do not have any Indian. They have to have an authorized person in charge in India. His Aadhaar authentication has to be done. In case of a LLP, again same partnership की तरह designated partner का करना पड़ेगा. In case of society, club, trust, members of the managing committee, and in case of any other constitution, say a association of person which is already there, but अगर कुछ any other person है, then the person who is in charge उसका आधार authentication करना पड़ेगा. And Aadhaar authentication बीच में आया है, then in that case what will happen? If Aadhaar authentication was not carried out, then the following functionalities will not work. ठीक है, क्या क्या functions GST portal में काम नहीं करेगा? Filing an application for revocation of cancellation. What is revocation of cancellation? We'll discuss in the next class because now we are dealing with registration. फिर आपका registration cancel हो गया, that also you can revoke when you are authenticated your Aadhaar then. And filing refund application also will be deactivated in and refund of IGST paid on exports. So तीन कैटेगरी के फंक्शंस ब्लॉक हो जाएंगे if your Aadhaar is not authenticated. If proprietor is from other state and we practice in other state, then proprietorship has to visit our office. Yes, he has to, because they need a person local presence. अगर local नहीं है, outstation है, they will give registration. That's come and give the authentication. So recently I have taken registration for both South Korean company and they have not demanded any other authentication. It's a construction based company. Okay, so then they would have applied for registration and they would have gone under that exception that register other authentication is not required, because generally all registrations now required other authentication. RFD 01 क्या है? Refund application. जैसे REG 01 है for registration, वैसे RFD 01 है for refund application. सर इनकम टैक्स में जैसे रिफंड बैंक अकाउंट में आता है वैसे ही कोई रिफंड जीएसटी में है क्या? हाँ, RFD 01 जब अप्लाई करेंगे तब रिफंड आपके बैंक अकाउंट में ही आएगा. ओके, व्हाट इज द न्यू रजिस्ट्रेशन प्रोसेस? दैट यस, जो मैं फिजिकल वेरिफिकेशन बोल रहा हूँ, आधार ऑथेंटिकेशन कर दिया आपने बाई आधार ओटीपी, देन आरसी इज ग्रांटेड विद इन 7 days. लेकिन अगर आपका आधार नहीं है, देन जैसे साउथ कोरियन कंपनी का किसी ने बोला कि हमने आधार ऑथेंटिकेशन नहीं किया है, देन व्हाट विल हैपन? द ऑफिसर विल कंडक्ट अ फिजिकल वेरिफिकेशन. 7 दिन की जगह 30 days हो जाएगा. आफ्टर फिजिकल वेरिफिकेशन ऑफ प्रिंसिपल प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस, आरसी विल बी ग्रांटेड. पहले क्या था? फिजिकल वेरिफिकेशन ऑफ प्रिंसिपल प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस इन प्रेजेंस ऑफ द सेड पर्सन. मतलब अगर मैनेजिंग डायरेक्टर का नाम दिया है, that person has to be present when the physical verification is carried out. So it becomes a lot of problematic. So that is being striked off. Matlab, that has been removed. So officer can come for verification, but the person may not be available at that time. That's fine. आपको physical verification करके चले जाना है. Whether the person is available or not available does not matter. So physical verification karke, you will be granted a registration. But PO, if the proper officer, as usual, fails to issue within 30 days, then deemed registration certificate will be issued. जो बहुत लोगों का क्वेश्चन था कि what will happen. So जो आईटीसी होती है, नहीं, जो इलेक्ट्रॉनिक क्रेडिट लेजर है उसका हम रिफंड नहीं क्लेम कर सकते. रिफंड क्लेम करेंगे जब हम स्पेसिफिक केसेस करते हैं. व्हेन यू मेक अ एक्सपोर्ट सप्लाई और व्हेन यू आर सप्लाइंग टू एसईजेड, only then you can claim the refund. In other cases you cannot. Not all ITC can be claimed as refund. Yes. तो सब लोग यही करेंगे, आईटीसी लेंगे और रिफंड क्लेम कर लेंगे. Only when it is zero rated supply, that is supply to SEZ or export, only then you can claim it. Persons who are already registered, provided that if Aadhaar number has not been assigned to the person required to undergo Aadhaar authentication, such person shall furnish the following: कि उसका Aadhaar authentication slip and bank account with photograph और वोटर आईडी कार्ड या फिर पासपोर्ट या फिर ड्राइविंग लाइसेंस, ऐसा कुछ देना ही पड़ेगा उसको. Now, at the time of submitting application, we have to give bank account details also. Okay. Bank account details, while submitting the application, you have to give your bank account details. But at the time of application, you do not have the bank account. In that case, if it is not available at the time of application, it can be submitted within 30 days. पहले 45 days था, now अभी 30 days. Within 30 days from the date of grant of registration or the furnishing details of outward supplies, whichever is earlier. इन दोनों के पहले आपको बैंक अकाउंट डिटेल्स देना है. एट द टाइम ऑफ अप्लाइंग फॉर रजिस्ट्रेशन यू आर सेइंग नो, आई डोंट हैव द बैंक अकाउंट एट द टाइम ऑफ अप्लाइंग फॉर रजिस्ट्रेशन. ठीक है, गवर्नमेंट इज गिविंग यू रिलैक्सेशन कि वी विल गिव यू द रजिस्ट्रेशन विदाउट योर बैंक अकाउंट डिटेल्स, बट यू शुड सबमिट इट बिफोर 30 days. या फिर बिफोर द ड्यू डेट ऑफ फर्निशिंग ऑफ योर आउटवर्ड सप्लाई, दैट इज बिफोर 13th ऑफ द सब्सिक्वेंट मंथ, जो भी आपका ड्यू डेट आएगा, either that or 30 days, whichever is relevant, उसके अंदर आपको बैंक अकाउंट डिटेल्स देना ही पड़ेगा, वरना what will happen, your registration will get cancelled. Okay, but for a person who is doing a TDS and TCS deduction, उसके लिए exception नहीं. This exception is for normal taxpayer, but special payers, that is TDS and TCS, क्योंकि उनको तो अकाउंट में जमा करना ही पड़ेगा, that's why they have to give this bank account at the time of application itself. But for others, you can give it within the due date of filing the returns or 30 days from the date of application. अगर नहीं देंगे तो क्या सिस्टम बेस्ड सस्पेंशन हो जाएगा, सिस्टम itself will suspend it saying that your bank account details are not furnished and you have to apply for revocation. That is, once you get your bank account, you give the bank account details, then that is called revocation. कि आपका registration suspend हो गया है, अब आपको क्या करना है, you can't do any business, you can't file your returns. So you get a bank account details and give it to it, and the registration will open up. That is called as revocation. So once cancellation and then revocation. And before cancellation, it's called suspension, suspension, then revocation. Biometric authentication, you do not have to keep it in your office, Navneet. There's a center because Aadhaar data is not given to everybody. So in the GST office, specified office, not all GST offices, there are specified centers within the GST office where they do this Aadhaar authentication. There you have to go. TDS, TCS concept intermediate level pe hai. We will discuss that in subsequent chapters. Can we go through CA final material for better understanding, or it tends to confuse? So it's not recommended to go through final material at that stage because most of these provisions are repeating there through little advanced level. So the examples or the illustrations, what is given, that you can go. But the concepts, I think this itself is clear because I've gone through the material now and the material which was there a couple of years back when I was studying. That material was not in a position to read, but today you have a material which is very excellent. I would say that most of my materials, I have gone through the presentations, what I'm preparing, I've gone through the material and then prepared it. So your present day material is really good. You should stick on to the present day material. You can go to the external books and other books for illustration purposes. To work out the problems, you can go, but our material is really very good. Apart from this, if any penalty, if bank data is not provided, no penalty. Your registration will be suspended. That itself is a big penalty. No penal penalties will be levied. Yeah. When will they do physical verification? Where the proper officer, PO means proper officer, PV means physical verification. Where the proper officer is satisfied that physical verification is required even after the grant of registration. Registration mil gaya, you cannot be happy. If he is suspicious that I've given the registration, but the person is not operating from that place, they can do a physical verification, or PO shall upload the, yeah, and PO should upload the verification कि उसने verify कर दिया, then he has to upload the physical verification report with documents and photographs within 15 working days. ऐसा नहीं कि we have time limit, even officers will have time limit that they have to complete it, and once they complete the verification, they have to upload the photographs and documents within 15 working days. And where physical verification is required before the grant of registration, then PO shall upload the physical verification report. Jab I have not done Aadhaar authentication, then physical verification is compulsory. No officer cannot do it at the nth moment. He will have to do at least 5 working days prior to the completion of the time limit. जैसे 30 days का time limit है, right? Within 25th day, he has to upload it. It's not that 30 days time है तो आराम से सो सकता है, नहीं. Where physical verification is required, 5 days in advance before the closing date, he has to upload the documents, then the officer will approve it. Because verification करने वाला officer अलग होगा और approve करने वाला officer अलग होगा. Okay. So let's say 5 days time is given to the officer who will approve the registration certificate. And if it is not before the grant of registration, it's after, तो फिर वेरिफिकेशन करके 15 days में उसको अपलोड करना है. Now, what will be the effective date of registration? If you have applied within 30 days, this we have seen, right? The input tax credit maybe. If you have applied for 30 days, within 30 days, when you become liable, that is section 22 में, because 24 कंपलसरी है, वहां पे तो आपको इमीडिएटली करना ही है once you start your business. So whenever is the liability starting from, उसके 30 days के अंदर आपको अप्लाई करना है. If you apply within 30 days, then the effective date of registration, date on which you became liable for registration, क्यों आप लिखेंगे उस registration application में, what is my date when I become liable for registration. So even if you apply on the 29th day or 30th day, you are still within the time. Your registration will be from that date. But if you apply late, then तो भी पुराना बेनिफिट है आपको नहीं मिलेगा. Whenever the registration is granted, that will be the effective date. सी द इम्पैक्ट इज वेरी ह्यूज कि आपने टाइम पे अप्लाई कर दिया है, तो इन द इंटरम में जो भी आप परचेज करोगे उसका आप क्रेडिट ले सकते हो, और बाद में अप्लाई करते हो तो फिर आपका लेट हो गया, आप इसका क्रेडिट यूटिलाइज नहीं कर पाओगे. Registration may be suspended. We'll come to the suspension, Aditya, that it can be suspended. After that, they will cancel it.
Good
If it
evening,
was-
students.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, this concept is particularly very important. Effective date of registration, because generally in the case scenario, which we get in the part 1 multiple choice questions, there also there is an implications of this topic registration. Registration itself is the important concept as far as procedural aspects of GST law is concerned. And effective date of registration, generally, most of the times, if you will see the past pattern, there is a question on this particular topic, effective date of registration, either in the multiple choice questions or in the descriptive based analysis based question. So this is very important that yes, if an applicant submits application for registration within 30 days from the date he becomes liable to registration, then the date on which he becomes liable to registration is the effective date. And if he submits the application after 30 days, then effective date is the date of grant of registration. And let me touch upon the key concepts of registration. In case of registration, you should be, clear. You should be clear in your mind the threshold limit applicable for registration, applicable to obtain registration. If a person is exclusively dealing in supply of goods, it is rupees 40 lakh. For special category states, rupees 10 lakh, and in otherwise it is rupees 20 lakh. And a person's exempt from obtaining registration, compulsory registration under section 24. These are really very important. So you should be very thorough in your understanding. Conceptual clarity should be thorough. In case of who are the persons, in which cases there is compulsory registration is required, irrespective of the threshold limit of registration. Then who all are the exempted from obtaining registration, and the threshold limit applicable for different states in case a person is dealing in both goods and services, exclusively dealing in goods or exclusively dealing in services. So all these concepts are important, and I hope that all these concepts have already been taught by sir. These are covered at the inception, in the starting only in the registration section 22, 23, 24 pertaining to compulsory registration. Although at intermediate level, you are not expected to memorize the section number. Section number is not expected at intermediate level, and it is always recommended not to quote than to misquote a section. And further, as far as Abhi, I was through this class, I was listening to the queries of the students, and the sir, while he was explaining to you that one of the students raised a query that can we refer the final study material. It is recommended not to refer the final study material, because in case of final level, even though some topics you might feel that they are the same, they are covered at the final level also, but the level of complexity, level of difficulty at the final level is more. So you unnecessarily will get confused, and few topics they are covered, they are relevant at intermediate level. Few topics they might be there at intermediate level only for the sake of understanding, not for examination point of view. So you please stick to the intermediate level study material only. and you may refer the examples with various illustrations, and we have covered the intermediate. We have come out with the intermediate revision test paper also for January 2026 examination. You may also go through them. So I hope that the Deepak sir, the concepts for today are over. I hope.
Yes, madam. Today's concepts are over.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Deepak sir, and thank you, students. Thank you for the patient listening, and see you in the next class. Okay. Thank you.
Ashok ji.
Yes, session is over. Thank you, everyone.